Okay, so we're going to do a little bit on the labor process right now, just kind of give you an overview of what happens in labor, what's going on in your body. So here's our model baby right now. Okay, so we're going to do a little anatomy first and just kind of help you understand what's going on. So this is your placenta right here. So your placenta is what's giving your baby all its nutrients right now. And the baby is getting its nutrients through its umbilical cord, which is attached to the placenta, okay? Now, your baby is inside the amniotic sac. So this sac right here is like your water. So when they say water sac, amniotic sac, like when your water breaks, that's what they're talking about. So your baby is living inside amniotic fluid right now. And so he's in there hanging out. Now, people always have questions about your water, like when does your water break? And so really, your water can break at any time during labor. And sometimes it's what triggers labor, not usually. Usually you start having contractions first, but with my first, my water broke and I wasn't in labor yet, which is okay. And so usually if your water breaks before you start labor, usually you'll start having contractions within a few hours. Sometimes it takes longer. But sometimes soon, and usually caregivers are okay with that. They usually give you at least 24 hours to kind of get going in labor if your water breaks. And water, people always wonder what that's like, and it can really vary. So sometimes you can get like just a little tear in the sac that's holding all the water there, and then it's just kind of a leak, like a slow leak that's coming out, and you kind of feel like, oh, did I just pee? No, maybe not. Kind of that sensation. And then sometimes it just totally breaks, and it's this gush of water where you're like, just, tons of water coming out everywhere, which is really funny because that's what happened with my first, and we were in the car and I was like, I don't know what to do, like it's just all coming. Luckily my husband had thought to husbands, I didn't think about this, but my husband thought to put a towel down on the seat, and so luckily there was a towel there, but it was hilarious. Like I was just laughing. I was like, this is the funniest thing ever. Like I don't even know what to do right now. So, and then sometimes it breaks during labor, partway through, sometimes at the very end, like once you're pushing, that's the pressure that breaks it. It really doesn't matter when it breaks during labor. So that's that. And then your water bag is inside your womb. Okay, so this brown one here is your uterus. So there's your womb. It's a nice cozy home for your baby. I lost the string to this, but that should be nice and closed. And your baby is kind of in your tummy like this. So ideally, this is like the best position for your baby. So his back is towards the outside of your tummy, and he's facing, your back. When they talk about posterior babies, if you hear that, or sunny side up, that means that they're flipped around, and so they're facing out, and their back's against yours, which isn't a great position for labor. It can be a lot more painful because the baby's spine and the back of his head is kind of pushing on your pubic bone. I'll show you. Okay, so here's your pelvis. And, so if the baby is backwards like this, his head is pushing like on your whole like sacrum and like this whole area. And so that can get really uncomfortable. And that's why women will have like back pain. And so I'm going to teach you some things you can do to flip the baby, help encourage the baby to flip around. So laboring this way is much more comfortable. So hopefully this is where your baby's positioned, but I'll show you some things to do to help encourage him to get in that position if he's not. Okay, so your cervix, when they talk about that, is this, I really wish my string worked, but it's this, the opening to your womb is your cervix. Okay, so right now your womb is closed, right? So that's what's keeping your baby in. When they talk about dilating, they say like you want to get dilated to 10 centimeters. What they're talking about is this opening. Your cervix is slowly going to start opening during labor, and it's eventually going to get to 10 centimeters diameter. And once you get to 10 centimeters, that's big enough for the baby to fit through, okay? So when your caregiver's checking you and they're like, oh, you're 2 centimeters dilated or 5 centimeters, that's what's going on. And what the contractions are, a contraction is, it's a muscle contraction, so if you contract the muscle in your arm, your muscle's tightening, that's a contraction. And so contractions in labor, your muscles of your uterus are contracting. Okay, so they're tightening, and what's happening is as they tighten, that's slowly pulling your cervix open just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And so that's the purpose of contractions, is that's what you need to slowly open your cervix so that your baby can fit through. So that's what's going on in labor. Oh yeah, and we already went through the umbilical cord. Okay, so typical labor process, what happens? We start with pre-labor. So pre-labor, you're not in labor yet, but sometimes before you go into labor, you start feeling contractions. Some people call them Braxton Hicks contractions. I don't know if any of you have been feeling any of those at all, but you can kind of just feel your uterus tightening a bit. They don't hurt. They're just that kind of tightening sensation. You might feel them for weeks before the baby's born. You might not feel any, and it totally doesn't matter. Both can be really normal. The way that you know that they're pre-labor contractions and you're not actually in labor yet is pre-labor contractions, they come and go, but they don't consistently get stronger or closer together. Okay, so you might be feeling them, but they're kind of just sporadic. They're not getting any closer together, and they're not getting any stronger. They're just kind of that tightening sensation that you feel. And so if that's all you're feeling, that's not really late. You're not in labor yet, so you don't have to worry about it yet. If you're wondering, usually practice contractions go away if you drink some water. Often that can start happening if you're dehydrated. So drink some water. Also, they can happen if you've been really active. So put your feet up on the couch, read a book, drink some water, and they should go away in an hour or two. If that's not happening and they start getting stronger or closer, then it might be a signal that you're actually in real labor. The cool thing about practice contractions, because it can be annoying, like, oh, am I not in labor yet? This is still just, false alarm. But be encouraged if you're having them because they're still accomplishing something. So before the cervix can even start dilating and opening, it has to soften, it has to thin out, and it has to move forward in your body a little bit. And so all those things, contractions help that happen too. So the cool thing is that if you're having Braxton Hicks practice contractions, just encourage yourself that, oh, well, my cervix is probably softening right now, so that's not going to have to happen in real labor. So you're getting some of the work out of the way ahead of time. So be encouraged it's not all for nothing and just an annoying thing happening throughout your day. It's actually accomplishing something that won't have to happen in labor. Oh, and the other thing that can happen in pre-labor is you might lose your mucus plug. So that's just... it might sound gross, but you kind of have this this blob of this mucus plug, and that's what's holding your cervix together right now so that your baby can't pop out before it's time. And so in preparation for labor, women will start losing that. And so it's also called like your bloody show. So you might start seeing a little bit of blood or just some mucusy stuff start coming out. And so that's just a sign that your body's prepping to start getting ready to go into labor. And it's so hard. Everyone wants to know, like, well, does that mean, like, when am I going to go into labor once that happens? But it's so different for every woman. And so it really doesn't tell you a whole lot. I mean, some women lose their mucus plug and they don't go into labor for another 2 weeks. Some women lose it the day they go into labor. So it just depends on your body. But it is a sign that at some point, labor, your body's getting ready. Could be soon. You could still have a week or two. But that's what that is. Okay, so then once you're in real labor, the way real labor starts is in early labor. So what happens in early labor is that's when your cervix is dilating 4 to 5 centimeters. So it's opening, just a bit, 4 to 5 centimeters. What you want to do, and you're in real labor because the contractions are getting stronger, they're getting closer together. And you want to just kind of ignore them until your body doesn't let you ignore them anymore. Because labor can take a while. It can be it doesn't have to, so I'm not saying that at all, but it can. And so if at the very beginning you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in labor, and you're timing them, every single one, and you're getting really excited and like really focusing on each of them, it could be a really long process for you. If then hours later you're like, okay, I'm still doing this. So my best advice to you is to ignore what's happening as long as possible, because it will get to a point where you can't ignore it anymore, and like you're going to need to focus, and you're going to realize like, okay, this is getting like intense. So until you hit that point, in early labor, you can talk through contractions. You can kind of just go about your day, but you realize something's happening. So rest if you're tired or it's nighttime. One of the toughest things in labor is exhaustion and being tired. And that's often because moms get so excited that they're in labor that if it's nighttime, they're not sleeping or resting. And then if labor goes on the whole next day, they didn't really sleep the night before. So let yourself sleep as much as you can. Try to sleep through the contractions if they'll let you. Take a nice bath. Otherwise, if it's during the day, keep busy with activities that are fun, go on a walk, chat with friends, bake cookies, just go about your day and try to stay distracted so you're not so watching the clock of how long is this going to take. Okay, so once activities are no longer fun, because it'll be fun for a while and then you get to a point where you're like, it's not really fun to play a game right now or watch a movie, I kind of just need to focus on what's happening. Okay, so once you get to that point, that's when you can start using the relaxation techniques we're going to talk about. And so in early labor for partners, this is when get everything ready, don't feel rushed, but if you have to drive to the hospital or birth center or something, make sure there's gas in the car, make sure the car's packed, just get the house ready if you're doing a home birth, just kind of take that time to, get everything ready. So then you'll hit active labor. So that's early labor. Active labor is when your cervix is dilating from about 4 or 5 centimeters to 8 centimeters. And at this point, usually contractions reach what they call a 4-1-1 or 5-1-1 pattern. And that means that, so 4-1-1 would mean that you're having a contraction every 4 minutes, and they're lasting at least 1 minute long, and that's been going on for an hour. So that's the 4-1-1. And that's usually what a caregiver wants to know, to make sure you're in established active labor and it's not just some kind of early pre-labor thing that could come and go, but you're actually going to have this baby soon. So timing contractions, they have apps now, so most people use those, but you want to time from the start of one contraction to the start of the next contraction. So, mom's okay, look, contraction starting, so husband, look at the clock, write it down if you're not using an app. And then she'll say, okay, it's ended, write down what time it ended so you know how long they're lasting, and then you wait a bit, and then when she's like, okay, another one's starting, then write down. So from when the first started to the next started, if that's 4 minutes, then your contractions are 4 minutes apart. So once that's been happening for an hour, that's usually the time to either call the midwife, and she's probably going to want to come to your house if you're doing home birth, or that's the time you probably want to head to the hospital. Usually in active labor, this is when contractions take kind of all your mental focus to handle. So you're not going to want to talk through them anymore. And I want to say it's not necessarily because they're super painful. Even my friend here who had 4 pain-free births, she was focused. It's kind of just this really intense thing, almost like when you're working out. It doesn't mean you're in a ton of pain necessarily, but if you're lifting, a heavy bar or something, you're not really going to want to be chatting while you're doing that. You're kind of focusing. So that's what's happening in active labor. It's an intense workout that your body's doing that just requires focus and work. It's good during active labor to make sure you're emptying your bladder every hour or so, because if it's full, that can cause it to be more painful or uncomfortable because baby's pushing on your bladder. You also want to make sure you're staying hydrated, so keep drinking water, coconut water, whatever sounds good to you. Just stay hydrated. It's good to change positions every 20 to 30 minutes. Movement in labor is so good, and we're going to talk about this more later, but here's let's take baby out of here for a minute so you can see him. If this is your pelvis, baby's trying to snuggle his way through your pelvis. And so the more you move, the more you're rocking, doing different things, it's just shifting your pelvis a little bit to make room for the baby to kind of nuzzle his way down. If you're just doing your whole labor in one position, it's not really giving him that flexibility of opening different parts of your hips up and different parts of your pelvis to give him room to nuzzle his way on down. So that's why changing positions is really good. It just gives him an opportunity if he's getting stuck in a certain spot to open that spot up, and he'll kind of shimmy his way down a different way. And so for partners during active labor, you just want to match her mood. So, and women handle labor so differently, and you kind of won't know what's going to feel best to you during labor, but just match her. So if she's I've seen moms that are like chatty, telling a story, contraction, focus, and then they like finish the sentence, chatty. And so if that's her mood, like just chat with her, like have fun, enjoy it. If she's like focused and serious and in between contractions, still just kind of wanting to like close her eyes and relax, like just be a peaceful kind of silent presence with her. But just, your wives, and just kind of match where they're at. So she might want touch, she might want encouragement, or just your silent presence. And she'll kind of tell you, some moms, I was like this, like I love touch and I love massage. And so the whole labor, I'm like, just rub my back or massage my shoulders. Oh, that feels so good. And then other moms, and there's not a right or wrong at all. It's totally what's working for them. Other moms are like in their birth zone and focus. And if someone's kind of touching them, they're like, wait, I can't focus when you're doing that, which is totally fine. And so in that case, if she's like, that's not helping to touch me, then just be that like rock next to her, a silent presence. And just know that matters. Because I've seen a mom where she didn't want to be touched, and so her husband was just sitting there, but then he got up to like go text someone, update on the labor, and she's like, where are you going? And he's like, well, I know, I was just gonna go text someone. She's like, no, don't leave, like I need you right here. And he was like, I didn't think I was doing anything, but like his presence next to her was doing something, like that was giving her just the emotional support she needed, of like, he is right there with me in this. So just know your presence is needed, however your wife is needing it at that moment. There's absolutely no right or wrong way for what she's going to need from you, and how you can be there for her. So after active labor, you're going to hit transition. You've probably heard of transition, and they call it transition because you're transitioning from the labor stage to the pushing stage. It's like the final transition of switching from contractions to move your baby down to like, okay, now I'm going to push my baby out. And transition is usually the most intense part of labor. It's usually the hardest part of labor. This is when your cervix goes from 8 centimeters to 10 centimeters. So it's that final just couple centimeters for your baby to be ready to come. The baby's beginning to descend into the birth canal. Contractions are longer and closer together. So usually they're like 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So they're pretty long. And your emotions and physical sensations are just really intense at this time. You have, and we'll talk about hormones in a little bit, but you have a huge shot of adrenaline all of a sudden start going through your body during transition, because your body knows it's going to need adrenaline to push this baby out. And so that influx of new hormones at that stage can kind of make you all of a sudden like, whoa, what's happening? And so it feels different for every mom, but sometimes you might start trembling a little bit. So know that that's normal. That's just crazy amounts of adrenaline going through you that's making you tremble a little bit. Some moms get a little nauseous or might throw up at that point, but I never did, but that can happen. You might get hot flashes or cold flashes. Just know it's like all of a sudden like, woo, there's crazy hormones going through me all of a sudden because I'm about to push this baby out. You can also just get really emotional because it's hormonal, and so you might start crying for no reason, or I'll get super excited. Like, I don't know, it's just a rush of hormones. So you might feel a little bit, if at some point you're gonna feel a little out of control, it's transition. But just know that that's normal and there's nothing wrong. Husbands, there's nothing wrong. And the best thing you can do for her, if she is starting to feel a little bit out of control, is just help ground her. She might just suddenly be like, I don't know what's happening, like what's taking over my body right now, but it really helps if you can just get in her face, make eye contact with her. It'll kind of just re-center her if she's suddenly like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. Bring her back in, like make eye contact with her and be like, you're doing great, we're gonna push this baby out. I needed that with Luke, my second one, when I was pushing him. The labor had been like so peaceful, so heavenly. I was like, I love this. And then right before I pushed him out, I was like, I don't know it was that crazy, just hormones. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't want to push this baby out. Like, it was just so intense all of a sudden. And for me at that time too, like, I don't know what, it must have been the position I was in to push, but both my legs had cramped up. And so, you get like a Charlie horse. So I was like, my legs were cramped and I was like, I can't push, like my legs are cramped. And they're like telling me to push. And, but my midwife was so awesome because she just like made eye contact with me, was like, Kiera, look at me. And she was like, don't think about your legs. Don't think about your baby. Just breathe with me. And I was like, okay. And just seeing her eyes, she was like breathing. And I was like, okay. And I just took a few breaths, and then I was like back to like, okay, let's do this. Like, I'm ready to push this baby out. So anyways, that's the best thing you can do for her. Make eye contact, tell her she's doing great. She's about to have this baby. Maybe take a few deep breaths with her, and you guys will make it through transition. The cool thing about transition is it's the shortest part of labor, and sometimes it's only 5 contractions, so it can be 5 to 20 contractions, but it's going to be less than an hour. And so that's the other thing you can encourage her. If suddenly she's like, wait, I don't think I can do this anymore, just remind her, like, it might only be like 3 more contractions, can you do 3 more? And she's probably gonna be like, oh yeah, I could do 3 more, and so it's gonna be over quick. So I think sometimes it can feel overwhelming if she has in her head, oh my gosh, I can't do this for hours, but knowing it might just be 10 more minutes, she's like, oh yeah, okay, I can do this. So, so that was the partner. Help her just keep her rhythm, eye contact, breathe with her. Yeah. Okay, so then you're gonna start pushing, and you'll start to feel the urge to push. Usually at this point, it depends on your caregiver, but usually they'll check you to make sure you're fully dilated. They wanna make sure you're 10 centimeters. And once they give you the okay that you're 10 centimeters, they're gonna encourage you to push. The cool thing about pushing is that it's kind of this feeling of relief in labor, because the pain of the contractions lessens, you have more rest, they slow down, so you have rest in between them because your body knows you need some rest to have the energy to push the baby out. You can kind of think clearly again, that like transition hormonal thing's gone, so your head's clear again, and you kind of just get a chance to regain your energy. Some women even have like a 20-minute rest period between transition and when they feel the urge to push, which is totally fine. Like, your body's just knows, okay, we're just gonna chill and rest for a little bit, and then they'll start up again and you'll push the baby out. For a lot of women, pushing is the most satisfying part of giving birth, just because it just feels good to like be accomplishing something. The other stuff, you can't really tell what's happening, but once you can tell, like, oh, I'm pushing this baby out, you're like, yeah, like, I'm doing this. So just be encouraged. Like, it really can be one of the best parts of birth is pushing your baby out. It's kind of different types of pushing. The best is spontaneous pushing, which is probably what your caregiver will let you try. And so that's just push when you have the urge. You're going to feel the urge. You kind of just bear down with it, push for 5 or 6 seconds, take a break, take some deep breaths. It's good to get oxygen to the baby, so you don't have to like just push straight for minutes. Like, you can push, take some breaths, push again when you feel the urge. And it's great if you can do it that way, because it just keeps oxygen there, keeps you from tearing. A really great thing during pushing is to picture your baby kind of moving down and out. Again, like, mentally, what we're thinking really does affect the rest of our body. I love the story. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Ina May, but she's the nation's leading midwife, and she's delivered thousands of babies and written amazing books about birth. But she said that one birth she was at, she had never seen a woman, like, just her vaginal opening get so huge, like stretched so big for the baby to come out. And so afterwards she asked her, like, did you do something to like stretch yourself out? Or like, I've just never seen that happen before, like a woman gets so big like that, and to make room for the baby. And the mom told her, oh, well, I just kept saying the mantra you gave me. And Ina May was like, I didn't give you a mantra. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, you told me because I was nervous about, tearing and the pain of like stretching. And you told me, oh, don't worry about it. When the time comes, you're going to get huge. And she said, so I just kept telling myself when I was pushing, like, I'm going to get huge. I'm going to get huge. I'm going to get huge. And just mentally thinking that helped her body relax and get huge. So if you're getting scared and thinking, oh, how is this going to fit? That might not work well. But just keep thinking, nope, God created my body to get huge. Like, God created me to stretch and open up. And he really did. So, so they're kind of you're gonna feel the urge to push. You're gonna take a breath, hold your breath, and kind of just bear down. And I say, do whatever feels good. I've seen, like, in the first birth class I took, we watched all these births that were like these peaceful looking bursts where she was pushing and quiet, and like I was like, oh, that looks nice. And then when I was pushing, I was like yelling and like, what was on those videos? What were those women doing? Like, and so I just say, like, go with it. If you want to make noise because that helps you push harder, like, make noise. It's kind of like, you know, in karate or something when they're like chopping a board. Like, sometimes I think making noise gives you strength. If you're like, ha, you know. If it's not helping, like, don't. But I just want to say, I think I felt pressure to be really quiet because of the bursts we watched. And I was like, how is anybody quiet? So I just say do whatever is working for you and feels good. Let's see what else. Okay, then there's something called directed pushing. So if for some reason just kind of you doing what feels natural isn't working and the baby's not coming down, or if you have an epidural and you're not able to feel the urge to push as much, then you might do something called directed pushing where the caregiver will kind of direct you. So she might say, okay, take a deep breath, now push, and she'll count for you. Like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, take a breath. So she might start directing it if that's needed, and that's totally, you know, fine too. So that is your pushing phase. You just want to use whatever position works best and feels best. Be willing to change positions when you're pushing every 20 to 30 minutes. Again, because maybe if it's taking a while, maybe a different position will help. And we're going to go through some positions of what those might look like. But if the baby feels like he's coming really fast and you're like, this is too fast, I need to slow this down, kind of common sense, you want to use a more neutral position, like laying back so gravity's not also pulling the baby down. If it's feeling like it's taking a really long time, then you might want to use a position like squatting, you know, that's helping gravity pull the baby down. One thing that can help if you feel like you're having trouble letting go, because sometimes women will hit a point where they're like, I don't want to push this baby out. Even though you do, there's like you're scared at the same time of like, this is crazy that I'm pushing this baby out right now. So if you're having trouble just letting go and really going with it, sometimes sitting on the toilet can help, just because we're used to letting go when we're sitting on a toilet and relaxing. So for some women, that's what they need to kind of trigger the like, oh yeah, I can do this. And you just want to relax when you're pushing. So you want to relax everything. And this is so interesting, but you especially want to relax. You want to relax your pelvic floor and your butt and just everything, your back, everything. But you also want to relax your face and your jaw because for some reason, this area of your body is tied to your lower regions. And so if you're clenching your jaw when you're pushing, it actually tightens you up down below. But if you're like opening your jaw, it actually can help opening you up down there. So that's actually why like moaning and things can really help, because if you're pushing and you're like, you're opening your jaw and relaxing everything, and it's actually relaxing the rest of you to help the baby come out. So I always encourage moms to moan when just because it's actually really good for their body. Yeah, which actually another little tip, because I hate throwing up. But in labor, and not, some women do, some women don't. Some women get kind of like some women get morning sickness in pregnancy, some women don't, you know. But if you are feeling nauseous during labor, just because of the hormones going through you and stuff, one really interesting thing, because moms are like, oh, I don't want to throw up. But if you do, just know that the good thing about that is it's also opening your jaw and your face and everything. And some women dilate a few centimeters like after they throw up because it just opened everything else up. So I always encouraged myself with that of like, okay, well, if I did throw up, at least maybe I'd be like 2 or 3 more centimeters dilated, you know. So there's some purpose to it besides. It's not like you're just sick, you know. I never did throw up in my labors or feel nauseous. Actually, both of them, I felt nauseous during like one contraction. And I was like, oh, babe, I feel nauseous. And we just prayed against it. And we were like, no, nausea, go in Jesus' name. We're not having this in our birth. And it left both times. And I didn't feel sick at all the rest of the labor. So take that. Because, yeah. Okay, so then, crowning and birth. So your baby is coming on down. So when you're pushing, what's going to kind of happen is your baby's, this isn't a great model, but okay, so your baby's coming down, you'll push, his head kind of starts to come towards the opening, and then as you're resting, he'll kind of come back up. And then you'll push again, and he'll kind of come a little further, and then come back up, and he'll come a little further and back up. So you're kind of doing this back and forth thing with him. Crowning is when he actually doesn't keep coming back up. So he's coming out like, your vaginal opening, and his head stays there. So you're not pushing, but his head's still there. And, husbands, you can just see his head and it's just hanging out there. So that's what crowning is. That's when, your vaginal opening, it stretches to its max. It can cause like a stinging kind of burning sensation, because that's the biggest it's going to stretch. The baby's head's the biggest part, which let me encourage you with that, because, when people talk about, like if they're overdue, if your baby's getting big, I was getting nervous with my first because I'm kind of small, and I was already a week past my due date, and I was like, is he getting really big, to my midwife? And she was like, well, don't even worry about it. She's like, the head is the biggest part, and that's not getting bigger. Like, he's just putting weight on, the rest of his body, but you won't feel the difference pushing him out. And I was like, oh, that's so encouraging. So be encouraged that once you get the head out, the rest is a piece of cake. You might need to stop or slow pushing at this point, just to allow the vagina to kind of gradually stretch. If you push too fast, too hard, that's when you might tear. So your caregiver will kind of direct you. Like, she might say, okay, just slow down a little bit, or just take some kind of panting breaths, like, and that'll kind of just ease the head through instead of just pushing it through real fast. And your baby's going to come out. And he might appear blue at first, so don't worry, that's really normal. He's kind of be streaked with blood and mucus and vernix, all the stuff he's been covered in. But after he takes his first breath, the skin becomes normal looking really quick. So husbands, don't worry if you're like, why is my baby blue? Because once they take a breath, they'll get their color really fast. So baby's born, you're gonna put him on your chest right away, do skin to skin. It's really good for the baby. Just cuddle and hang out. The third part of labor is the delivery of your placenta. So as you're kind of hanging out with your baby on your chest, your caregiver is going to help you, kind of direct you to push the placenta out. And usually it happens within like 10 to 30 minutes of the baby being born. So your contractions will stop, but then they'll kind of start up again, and the caregiver will say, okay, give a little push here. It's so much easier than birthing a baby. The placenta is just, where'd my placenta go? It's squishy. So it's not going to hurt to push out. It's really just squishy. So, because at first you're like, I don't want to push anything out again, but just know it's really not a big deal. So you'll give a little push, the placenta will come out. That's when they'll, clamp and cut the cord. And yeah. So, yeah.
Do you have any advice or tips on water birth, or like anything we should know about them?
I think they're heavenly and wonderful. So Luke's was a water birth. No, everything happens the same. So pushing's the same. When a baby doesn't take a breath, he's living in water. So a baby doesn't take a breath until he hits the air. So he's not gonna breathe in the water when you birth him in the water. Like, he still just thinks he's like in the womb in water. So there's no worry about him like, choking on water or something like that. But yeah, so you just birth them into the water, and then the caregiver, it's actually nice. Water births are great because if, they're tangled at all in the cord, you can kind of just spin them around in the water a little, and then they'll just pull them out of the water and put them on your chest, and then it's once they hit the air that they'll take a breath. So there's really nothing different about the labor process. Water is just great because water just feels really good. If you're sore and you sit in a hot tub, like, it's relaxing, it feels good. So that's why I love water births. It's kind of a natural relaxer and painkiller. And and there's lots of ways you can push them out in the water, whether you're like leaning forward on the tub, squatting, or I was leaning against Michael and he was kind of holding me from behind, and I was kind of squatting and pushed him out. But
was he in the tub with you?
Yeah, Michael was in the tub with me. Yeah, and so you could do either. The husband can be in the tub with you, kind of supporting you, or he can be on the outside and you can be leaning on him, and he can kind of be rubbing your back or something. So either way. If he's out of the tub, he can kind of catch the baby, which is awesome. Or I wanted Michael behind me, so he didn't actually get to see Luke being born. He was just behind me, and then he saw him when I saw him, when we kind of like pulled him up, So yeah. Yeah. So, this whole process for first-time moms, the average length is 12 and a half hours from like beginning to end. I say pray for whatever time you want it to be, though. So it doesn't have to be that long. But just know that that's average, so you're not like, what's wrong if, and that you're enjoying it. The cool thing about labor too is you lose a sense of time. You really do. So 12 hours might sound long, but that's like early labor to, where you're hanging out, chatting, having fun, making cookies, in labor. So it's not like, but it can be shorter, it can be longer. Precipitous labors, that's the word for very fast labor. That's if it happens in a couple hours, and that can be super intense. Some people want a really fast labor, but I just want to say it could be supernatural and amazing quick, but also there is a process your body goes through to birth. And so sometimes the moms who have that happen really, really fast, it's crazy intense, because what normally happens over the stretch of like 6 hours is happening in 1 hour, and they're like, what is going on, So just stay calm. That's okay. Your baby's going to be out faster, but that's pretty rare. Normally they don't happen that quick. I have included in your packet, because husbands I feel like have this fear a lot, what happens if the baby comes before the caregiver gets there, or we're on the way to the hospital or something. So that's very rare also, but just so you have some peace of mind, I have a little checklist in your folder of like what to do if for some reason the baby's coming really fast and you don't have someone there. So at least you feel a little prepared, like, okay, I have something I can read to know what to do. And slow labor, sometimes it really can take a few days and kind of come and go. And I've been a doula for births like that, where they kind of are in labor for a bit and then it dies off, and then the next night it starts up again and kind of comes and goes, or it can just kind of be constant for a couple days. And I just want to say with that, to not be discouraged, because that can be really special and heavenly too. One of my good friends in LA, hers was 48 hours of pretty consistent labor. But she loved her labor, and she was doing a home birth, and they had candles all over the house and worship music, and she pretty much worshiped for 2 days, and she loved her labor. She talks about it with such fond memories. So I just want to encourage you that to not be discouraged if you're like, why is it taking so long? Jesus can so meet you in that, and it was a really, really special 2 days for her and her husband. So yeah, and that is the labor process.